I'm going to talk about is continuing the theme that we were just talking about. I want to talk about love and respect. Now, primarily this is going to be a message for couples, but it has applications to other things too and how we deal with people. And we're going to talk about how people are attributes of people. Now, I like to give messages that are original. This one's not. I'll say that right up front. This is based on the work and research of a guy, Dr. Emerson Eggerich. He has a ministry where it's called Love and Respect, and he gives these seminars and he has videos and different things. He came up with something while he was working on his doctorate that was obvious, but it was also like groundbreaking, because it's like, why did we overlook this before? And it's about communication. It's about how we talk to each other. As we were talking up here, you see how we talk to each other is important. Now, we learn from when we're little that words can hurt or words can heal. That's why when you go to school, they, no mean spirit, don't bully, don't, make fun of the other kids and things like that. You learn really young that words have power. Now, this is especially true in a relationship. Our words have life. First thing we want to take into consideration as we talk about this subject is that men and women communicate differently. And because they communicate differently, they understand differently. This seems obvious. I mean, we know that, right? Or do we? See, in our society, in our culture, it teaches that everyone is equal. But and that's a good thing. It is. But what actually comes out being translated as we deal with people is that everybody is exactly the same, not that we have the same value. That's what being equal means. We have the same value. I'm just as valuable as you, and you're just as valuable as me. There's no difference. I'm just as valuable as the president of the UN. It doesn't matter who we all are equal value. But that doesn't mean we're exactly the same. I'm 5'9", a basketball player is 6'5". I mean, we're not exactly the same, and that's okay. God likes diversity, but we have the same value. But when we look at this as people being exactly the same, we forget that men and women are created with unique attributes that make them who and what they are. Because we forget that men and women have these differences, it creates problems with our communication. Now, not understanding these differences is how a lot of times in our relationships we have problems. I used to get into arguments when I worked on my second master's. Yeah, that sounds kind of strange too. But when I worked on the degree for counseling, I used to get into arguments with some of my professors because I thought one of the most important books that came out in the last 20 years was one called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And not necessarily for everything that the guy was saying, but just for the fact that this guy came out and bucked the trend in our society to say that everybody's equal. And he says, look, men and women are different. I mean, because they are. Right? We are different. And we have to take that into consideration. That's important. Like, you ever seen the movie My Fair Lady? One of the funniest songs in that is the guys are getting together and they're complaining about women, and it says, now why can't a woman be more like a man? Because we're reasonable, we're intelligent. But that's the kind of thing that you see coming out of society. Don't take your cues from the culture.
Right, that's it.
That's a big point. We live in a negative and sarcastic and insulting society. Don't believe me? Watch TV. Real Housewives. Well, first off, that's about as real as a $3 bill, but all they do, they're nasty and insulting to each other, right? The Simpsons. Nobody has any respect for each other.
Right.
That does translate into us. Go to a playground and watch kids. You're stupid. No, you're stupid. I can't believe you're wearing those shoes. Little kids. Where do they learn that? The boob tube, as we used to say it in the 70s. Put downs, and they're funny, right? Watch Eddie Murphy movies, and that's all he does, right? Or is it right? Somehow, I figured this out early in life, and that's why I stopped playing this game. Disrespect to other people is like an ego game that we play to make us feel stronger than the other person. We are boosting our ego. That's the whole point of a lot of this bullying. Right. We boost our ego at their expense.
Right.
We have to be careful not to do that, because that's not the biblical way. Now, you don't think we do that? Boost ourselves at other people's expense? Think about the jokes that are told out here. on TV and to each other. Why do men like smart women? Because opposites attract. Why do they always send a woman on the space shuttle? Somebody has to ask for directions. Hey, have you heard about the blonde who tried to go water skiing? Well, she gave up because she couldn't find a lake with a slope. Now we laugh, right? These jokes are really common, but it's really disrespectful.
Yes.
It's really disrespectful. And in some cases, they create hard feelings. And if you use them in your relationship, it can damage your relationship.
Exactly.
Now, the way that people treat each other in the world is totally the opposite of what we're taught in the Bible. The Bible teaches something totally different. It's funny that the Bible gives a recipe. I mean, really, it's almost literally a recipe for couples communications. And you can't find this anywhere else. If you look up in your Bible, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. Ephesians 5:33. Give you a second to find that. Ephesians 5:33 says this, "Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband." Now that's King James. But if you read it in the NIV, it says, "Each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband." Now, this was the verse that started off all the research that Dr. Eggerich did. He had never realized. You read this verse millions of times, it's stuck in the middle of a paragraph, and he says, that's the key. That's the key. Do you see the principle here? Men and women are motivated by different things. Men need to feel respected, and they're motivated by respect. Women, on the other hand, need to feel loved, and they're motivated by love. So we can see how this works in our words. What we say to each other affects how we and they feel as far as being loved, and how we and they feel as far as being respected. Now, love and respect is a funny thing. We all need that. We need both. But how we respond to those and how we apply it to ourselves depends upon our gender. Remember, the genders see things different. Men and women react differently when they feel unloved or disrespected. And we can see some of that in the Bible. Now, if you want to open your Bible with me to 2 Samuel chapter 6. 2 Samuel chapter 6. This is an interesting story. And we're going to start at verse 14. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14. This is a pretty fascinating story. I like the stuff in Kings because unlike most ancient literature, the Bible does something unheard of. It talks about the people in it, warts and all. When you read the other stuff like, the Babylonian stuff, the Babylonian epics and things like that, and the Egyptian epics, when you read it, these guys are always like supermen. It's like reading a cartoon, or a comic book. The guys are always super strong. They never make a mistake. They never make a bad decision. They never do anything wrong. And then you read the Bible, and it's like we're full of just people, They do stupid things, and they fail. And that's actually a mark of authenticity of the Bible, by the way. The fact that it shows people warts and all shows how authentic it really is. Okay, 2 Samuel chapter 6, starting at verse 14. "And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. And as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. She despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in his place, in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And he dealt among all the people, even among all the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the women as men, to every one a cake of bread, and a good piece of flesh, and a flagon of wine. So all the people departed, every one to his house." So this is a cool story. They'd just gone to war, and they won. For the first time in forever, they won. So David goes back. The Philistines had captured the Ark of the Covenant and taken it back, and that was like the biggest insult that you could do back then, was to steal the other guy's gods. Even though the Ark of the Covenant wasn't God, that's what they thought. So they stole all their stuff. David went back, he defeated the Philistines, took his stuff back, and they brought it back. He brought back the Ark. Now David was the king of Israel. He did something unheard of, which was not only, he did all the right religious things. He had the sacrifices going. He put the ark back into the tabernacle where it belonged. And then he gave gifts. Wouldn't you like to do this? Wouldn't you love if after President Obama won the next election, he gave everyone a day's wage? Right up front. Here, everybody gets a check. Every man, woman, and child in the United States gets a check. That'd make you pretty popular. That's basically what David did. He gave him some bread, he gave him some meat, bottle of wine, and gave him the day off. That's our man, right? So, but this is where it gets interesting in the story as we continue on in verse 20. David goes to bless his own household. He blessed the nation of Israel, and now he's going to bless his own household. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself." And David said unto Michal, "It was before the Lord, which chose me before thy father, and before all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore I will play before the Lord. And I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in mine own sight, and of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor." Therefore Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child unto the day of her death. Pretty powerful story. So they come back from war, and he's dancing for the ark. Basically, it's like he's dancing in a T-shirt. Like all he's wearing is a T-shirt. He doesn't have his kingly robes on. He just has normal clothes on, and he's dancing, right? David was a dancer. And we see that all over the place. He let the Spirit move him, and he moved. And that's nothing wrong with that.
Hallelujah. Amen.
But what's amazing is this. So here he is, David, the war hero. David, the king. He's competent. He's capable. He's praised and respected by everybody but his wife. Wow. She says, "Some kind of husband you are. You're dancing in public, wearing common clothes. You might as well have been naked." And not only that, all the servants are going to think you're stupid. Right? That's the thing about the maid servants, because the help is beneath you. That kind of thing. She was embarrassed because of her husband's actions. Well, really, if you look at the passage, David didn't do anything wrong. He was doing the right things. I mean, he followed the Lord's guidance. He brought the ark back. He praised God. He let the Spirit flow. He blessed his people. He did good things. But his wife had this bitter and disrespectful attitude. Now, to be fair, this is not a one-shot thing. Okay, this is the culmination of and this is the way life is. Nothing happens in isolation, and this is the one thing that we always try to do when, like on TV. That's what's bad about reality TV. You only see something in isolation. Like the Real Housewives. That one woman ran off with that guy who's a rock star, right? And you think it's like she suddenly got stupid and ran off with a rock star. Well, no. This was the culmination of a series of events. She was having problems with her husband already for years. This is the way it was with David and Michal. They met when they were teenagers. Her dad was the king at the time. So she's the princess, he's the nobody. They're young, they fall in love, they get married, everybody's happy. And then Dad loses the kingdom and David gets it. And we start to see all these rivalries come about. She basically, no way around it, she married another guy while she was still married to him, while he was out fighting wars. And so he comes back and "Where's my bride?" And she's married to some other guy. And she's like, "Forget you," because she's the daughter of a king. So they have problems already. And I'm sure he has his own little attitudes about this stuff too. But it always builds up. But we can see in this set of verses that we just talked about, because of her disrespect towards him, how did David react? He wasn't very loving to her. He's like, he didn't say, well, but baby, I love you. No, he didn't do that. Right. He says, not only will I do that, I'm going to do worse. Because he didn't have an ego. The relationship was so strained that eventually they got what we would consider now a divorce. He gave her own little house and stuff and put her to the side and never talked to her anymore. And I like the fact God cursed her for her bad attitude. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to happen to everybody. I'm just saying that's what happened to her. She was punished by God for her hardness of heart. So what happens when a man doesn't show love to his wife and a woman doesn't show respect to her husband? Well, it causes hurt inside. And we see that in the story. It causes hurt inside. We have to admit that. Right. It hurts. The words hurt. And that's something we don't do in our society either. Now, speaking basically as a man, my father was the kind of guy that was raised that you never show feelings. It's weak for a man to show feelings. Right. So he never showed us, brother, we never saw emotion from him. Actually, until he was like in his 60s. He overcame all this. So when I was growing, that's the way I learned how to be kind of a man. And it took me years to overcome that, to know that I can show emotions, that I can admit emotions. And so it would damage relationships because I wouldn't show love towards other people. I would keep it all in. And that's what we want to not do. So like I say, we get this thing going on, right? Man doesn't act like he loves his wife. The wife disrespects the husband. We get this going like a cat fight going on, right? Emotionally. You may not be doing it on the outside. It builds up pressure like it did with David and Michal. It just builds up and builds up and builds up. It's kind of like this. When a man feels disrespected and emotionally hurt, the message he gets from the woman is this: I do not accept you as a man. I do not approve of you as a husband. And I do not respect who you are as a human being. Now, males are funny. Males are actually hardwired to close off their spirit to people who hurt them. In Venus and Mars terminology, he slinks off to his man cave and sits in front of the tube, right? And he hides out. It is in a man's nature when they're hurt to withdraw. Now, a woman, when she feels unloved, she'll react in a very negative way, which to the man is seen as disrespectful. Can we start to see something happening here? Now, I'm not saying this is wrong, in quotes. There's no right or wrong here. It's just how people are. Women, when they're hurt and they feel unloved, act and speak. So we start to see the opposites here between men and women, like the Venus and Mars. Men withdraw when they're hurt. Women want to talk about it. So what do women do? They want to talk about it. And the man goes, I don't want to talk about it. No, we want to talk about it. No, I don't want to talk about it. So what happens? It's just this back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. And it's kind of like can of soda? I want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to. Oh, you're going to talk to me about it. Well, you're no good at anything. Why don't you talk about it? I don't want to talk about anything. I want to talk about you. Right. Anybody want to open it? No. But that's the way our relationships are, right? After a while of this, it's like a shaked up bottle of soda. When you open the top, it explodes. Right. And that's what we saw in that story with David and Michal. It just exploded. He's like, enough. We want to try to avoid that. Now, Dr. Eggerich calls this the crazy cycle. Okay? And it makes sense when you think about it. And it works like this. Start at the top. Okay. A woman says something, a man don't like it, so he withdraws. He withdraws his love. And she senses that the love's withdrawn, so she says something, so he withdraws. And it keeps going on and on. It's a cycle. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it can get worse. It can, it can get building up. It all depends on the people, of course. But what we want to do is we want to look at what's God's way.
Right.
So how do we break this cycle of crazy? How can we get ourselves to love and respect each other? Well, we got to go back to Ephesians 5:33. Husbands, love your wives.
There you go.
Wives, respect your husbands.
That's it.
Now, I want to note something about this verse, which is pretty interesting. This is not a suggestion. In the context of that paragraph, it's a command.
Wow.
Men, love your wife how?
As
you love. Ooh. That's pretty high speed, right? And as you love yourself.
Good.
And we're going to find in other places. I mean, it says all over the place. You ever notice that? There's something. It's really interesting if you want to play trivia someday with the Bible. It doesn't say in the Bible that wives are to love their husbands.
Right.
It says that the husbands are to love the wives and the wives are to respect the husbands. We see the same concept in Peter and in a few other places.
Right. That's true.
Well, husbands, love your wives. God knows what we need before we need it.
Right. Right.
And in spite of Oprah or psychology or whatever, God knew what we needed before we ever decided to discover it. People need love and people need respect, and we respond differently to it. Now, these are commands.
Right.
Here's Paul commanding these people. Now, here's the important thing. Remember I talked about with the song that Jesus earned the right to be king.
Right. Exactly.
In this verse, this is not something you earn. A common thing that you'll hear, like doing counseling, you hear neat stuff. But a common thing you hear when you talk to people is, well, I'll respect him when he earns it. And the guys say, well, I'll love her when she shows me she loves me.
Come on.
No. It's not earned. It's commanded. We just do it.
Think about it. Think about it.
And here's why. As a believer, we are supposed to be the more mature ones in a relationship.
That's it.
I mean, it's assumed. The Bible assumes that. We are going to be the more mature one. We're the more understanding ones because we have knowledge of what's true. Saying that to somebody that, well, I'll respect you when you earn it, or I'll love you when you show me, that's sinful. That keeps the cycle going.
Exactly. That's it. That's it.
We want to love and we want to respect unconditionally. Just 'cause. I say that a lot. After I wrote a newspaper article called Just 'Cause. Why do we do this? Just 'cause.
Yeah.
Why not? Why do we need an explanation? Just 'cause. So how do we do it? Let's take it out of theory and let's make it practical. The pastor kind of touched on some of this. In Dr. Eggerich's book, I mean, it's actually called Love and Respect. You can buy it all over the place. I mean, he sold millions of these books. It's a very good book, and I do suggest it. He gives examples of people that he has counseled. And they said, well, how do you do this? He'd be talking to wives who have problems with their husbands, and he'd ask them, do you respect your husband? No, I don't. I don't like him. There's not, and they talk about him. It's like, he'd be like, is there nothing good about your husband? Nothing. And they go, no. Right? I mean, because the negative overcomes us.
Right.
So what we have to do is consciously find the positive. And this is true for anybody. You do it with your kids, anybody. You have to consciously find the good.
Right.
Because we are not, our society does not make us and train us to be people who find the good.
Exactly.
That was my biggest complaint when I was in the Army, is that my job was not really to be a problem solver, it was to be a problem finder. So it ends up, now we got a whole group of people that are sitting around, all we do is find problems and complain. I said, no, let's find a solution, and that kind of put me to the side because I was the oddball. But it's true, you know, anybody can find a problem. We want to find a solution. So, what good things can we do? Just think about this. How about this, wives? Girlfriends? Whomever. Think about your significant other and say, honey, I want to tell you how much I appreciate and respect that you work hard to give our family a living.
There you go. That's good.
Honey, I appreciate that you get up in the morning and go to work. You say, well, that's pretty little thing there. Honey, I appreciate that you keep gas in the car, so I don't have to. Honey, I appreciate how good you are with the children, so I can do other things.
There you go.
You say, well, those are just little things. It's really minor. It's not a big thing. Well, but, you know. No, start at little things, and then work your way up. And then you'll start reminding yourself of the other good things. And men, you're not off the hook. Now, you got to do this to your wife, too.
Come on.
One thing I learned as you go through a lot of reading this kind of material and learning it, and I've heard Dr. Eggerich talk about this. See, remember, it tells you men don't show their feelings like women do. It doesn't mean they don't have any. It just means they don't show it. Women, you have a privilege with a man that you probably do not understand, and that's this. A man will never really talk about being in love with you. They might. I mean, I'm a little more verbal than most people. But the thing is that you are their anchor of stability in life, and they appreciate that. And that's true. That's kind of the way men are hardwired. John Gray and Gary Smalley, they talk about, men are the hunters and gatherers, and we go out and we pursue you and we win you over. Yes, we got the big game. Yes. And then it seems like nothing. They go off and do something else. Well, it's not that you're not important. You are now foundational to their lives, to the life of the man. Because of that, the relationship is solid, and we have this foundation in this woman we love, we can go into the world of work and take on the business world and take on the corporate culture and win again.
Right.
You allow that. So you're more important than you think. Guys, we got to tell them. Sweetheart, I love you.
Amen.
It is because of you I can do what I do.
Amen. That's it.
You are the strength and stability of my life. You're always there for me. You take care of things I can't do. I love you, and I will always be here for you. And guys, that's what she wants to hear. Because you know what the funny thing about this whole crazy cycle is? Anything that's being argued about is not what you're arguing about.
That's right.
I mean, it isn't. Bottom line, it isn't. Woman, you can't do anything right. You're blah, blah, blah. Do you love me? Am I the most important thing in your life? Man, you woman, blah, blah, blah. Do you respect me? Am I important in your life? Those are the real issues. And those are the issues we never talk about. But that's what we need to talk about. You know, it's like we were talking about with Jesus. Jesus dies on the cross. What's he do? He shows love in all of those ways.
Right.
He gives you the foundational strength and stability of your life to be able to go out and do other things in life and be successful. He loves you and shows it to you. And he will always be there for you. Now, there's actually some more to this teaching. If you find the book, it's about 2 inches thick. But this is some of the basics. But it's something to think about. What comes out? How do we talk to each other? I mean, come on, let's be honest. Blondes really aren't stupid.
Right.
I mean, I know. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they're really not stupid. And men really do know how to drive. Kinda. And kids aren't stupid. And you're not retarded.
Right. Right.
And what else do we say to each other?
That's it.
There used to be a little kid's book, and the verse kind of touches on this. And in this book for little kids, it had this phrase, Ialak. I am loving and capable. That's what we are. That's what we need to be telling each other. We need to be telling each other, yes. See, that's the funny thing about men. Men, we're competitive. We get our competency from what we do. And we kind of get our ego from what we do. I mean, that's why people don't, ski off the top of Mount Everest because, they don't get something out of it. Of course you do. But the last thing you want to hear when you go home from the person that you love, who is the foundation of your life, is, the heck is wrong with you? You can't fix a toilet. And the last thing the wife wants to know is, well, how dare you say you love me? You're on the phone all the time and you don't cook dinner. So we don't do that. So we want to do just the opposite. Wow, honey, you just did an amazing thing. I saw you on ESPN. Oh, honey, I see you've had a rough day with the kids, and I can see that. Let's go to Olive Garden. We'll get a babysitter. Let's build up and build up. Say good things. You can do this. Tell them that. Love and respect. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect your husbands.